Before I start, I have to introduce our speaker or anything here. This is traditionally dedicated to the memory of a former director and friend, Bruce McClay. This particular meeting is, we do this every year. And before I introduce our speaker for tonight, our speaker for the next meeting will be Frederick K. Wentz. He's a native of Gettysburg, graduated from Gettysburg College, Gettysburg Seminary, and Yale University. He's got his PhD in 1954. Seminary professor from 1953 to 1976. President of Hammer School of Theology from 66 to 73. Lutheran pastor, retired to Gettysburg in 1987. He's the author of numerous books and articles, over 100. He's active in the Lutheran Historical Society, active in the National Lutheran Historical Conference, a member of our society, and a member of the S.S. Schmucker Bicentennial Committee. He will speak on the life of Samuel Simon Schmucker, and we will be celebrating the 200th anniversary of his birth on the 28th of this month. So I hope that you can come out and hear the story of the man that this building is named for. And now it gives me great pleasure, of course, to introduce our own director here, Dr. Gladfelter, who will give his annual results of what has happened in the past year. Dr. Gladfelter.
I think you all know who's watching you. Careful how you act tonight, because Samuel Simon Schmucker had definite ideas about how people should act. As Bill said, we devote the month of February to the memory of Bruce McClay, who was a director of this society from 1971 until his death in 1981, who was a man who gave us a great deal of sound advice. He was not necessarily the kind of person to open his mouth first, but usually when he did, he said things that made a great deal of sense. He was a banker with all of the advantages and the disadvantages which go with being a banker. And having been one for a while at a very low level, I know there are advantages and disadvantages. He was a man who suggested to us how we should set up our very first trust account when we got a sum of money from Francis Swenning. And we still follow the general principles that he established while he was a director of the society. As was the case a year ago tonight, it's almost necessary to reflect not only upon the last year, but upon a longer period of time, because it was 40 years ago last month that I assumed a responsibility for this society, which developed from one subtitle to another until eventually it came out director. In the year 1958, before I assumed some responsibility, the income of this society, the annual income of this society, was $241. The annual expenses were $173. So the people who were running this society in 1948 were frugal, and they kept it in the black. The total assets in dollars and cents of the society were $449. Now, there was an auditing committee at that time. It moved slowly. It was supposed to report in January. It didn't report until February. And I believe that one of the auditors is here tonight, Clarence Swin Jr. Why did it take so long for the auditors to present their report and find the books correct? Do you remember?
No.
Last year was an unusual year for us. Last year, the expenditures of the society were $100,000. Usually they're about $65,000, but we had a number of good sources of income. So we've gone from $241 in 1958 to about $65,000 most years now. And we have in Chester Byers and Diane Brennan a treasurer and an assistant to the treasurer who keep things moving very smoothly. I don't know, it might take them 2 months to get us a good audit. In that respect, we might not have made much progress since 1958. It takes people to make any organization go. It takes people to make a historical society go. I cannot forget that my appearance on the scene happened after the illness of Dr. Robert Fortenbaugh led him to resign late in 1958, and in a month or two it'll be 40 years since Dr. Fortenbaugh died. I remember, and perhaps most of you do not, I remember the work that Edith Ditchburn did in the society when we were in the basement of the courthouse. I remember the work that Frank Newcomer did and a number of other volunteers. George Olinger became involved in the society just about the same time that I did, and continued until his death. For about 30 of the years that separate us from 1959, Elizabeth Tangent worked painfully, quietly in this society. That was her habit. She became a little more talkative as she got older, but not much. On January 5th of this year, Elizabeth Tangent became 100 years old. We sent her a card, which most of us signed, and are waiting to hear from her, but her eyesight is bad, and she tends to fall, she said. And I hope that if she does fall, there will be someone close to catch her. The only surviving volunteer of 1959, other I guess than me, is Arthur Weiner. Arthur has the distinction of being around this place longer than I have, and when it comes to discuss things that happened in the 1950s, it's necessary to defer to him. We've been in this facility since the spring of 1961, almost 38 years. And we have a lease now with the seminary that does not expire until the year 2026, so we can expect to be here for 27 more years. We try to pay our rent on time, We pay it once a year, and as many of you know, the rent is $1 a year. We pay the utilities. We're responsible for maintaining the building on the inside and the outside, and that is a sizable responsibility. I'm not sure I know where the money has come from, but we have spent well over $150,000 on the inside and the outside of this building since the lease in 1959. And we now have a grant from the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission, which has to be matched, a grant of $25,000 for very important work to be done on the exterior. Replacing some brick that have deteriorated, removing the mortar from around all of the windows, and replacing it with a mortar which is thought to be better in 1999 than the mortar that was used 40 or 50 years ago when work might have been done on this building. What we have been doing here in 1998 and also in the last few years is a combination of old things and new. One of the distinctive things about this society that goes back almost to the beginning of its present existence is monthly programs, which many historical societies do not have. Many historical societies might have quarterly programs. Some of them may have about one a year. We have not 12, we have 9, and we've had a succession of program chairmen who have worked very hard, and Bill Millar certainly is one of them. If you attend these meetings regularly, I think you appreciate the speakers he has brought here, and the rest of us do too. We also have a newsletter, which is 25 years old this month. The first issue of the newsletter came out in February of 1974. It was one page, one piece of paper with information on one side of the page. The articles were very brief. They told a little bit about what was going on. We now have a newsletter that comes out 9 times a year, as our meetings are 9 times a year, and Jim Myers works very hard in producing a newsletter that is geared to the needs of this society, with a variety of articles giving information, not about garden parties or things like that, but about aspects of the history of this county in which we're interested. In 1995, we were able to start something which we're continuing, and that is the issuance of an annual, which goes with society membership, which you do not have to pay for extra. Jim is working on the 5th number of that annual, the one that will carry the date 1999, and we're also looking ahead to its appearance in another guise in the year 2000. This society has a museum, it has a library, and it has archives. A few comments about each one of these. The museum has been closed for several years while we took care of a problem with some pesky bugs. We have succeeded in taking care of that. And in doing that, we were able to secure the services for the first time in the history of the society of a trained and experienced curator. The museum that opened in October and that is still in development is going to be different than the museum that existed in the past, in which a few of us put furniture from one family or things that illustrated maybe what might appear in the home, what might appear on the farm. Mrs. Carney has a different idea of how a museum should be organized, and those of us who might have done it differently in years past are not about to interfere with the very solid work that she's doing. We have a museum committee under the direction of Nancy Jean Hammond, which is providing Carol Carney with a lot of support. I hope that during the course of the year 1999, we will be able to offer more planned tours of that museum than we've been able to do up to this point. About the library, we do not buy many books for the library. We do not accept many books, many at all, which do not deal directly with the history of this county. Someone offered us, within the last 3 to 4 months, 3 volumes of a history of the Civil War, published about 1866 or 1867. And the donor said, "You do with it what you want," which is what a library likes to hear. So I, instead of pitching it, I offered it to the Civil War Institute at Gettysburg College, where it's more appropriately housed than it is here. Someone called yesterday, has a book for us. It turns out that it is a history of the Mickley family, which was published perhaps as long as 100 years ago. The answer I gave to that person is yes, this will be our second copy of the Mickley history, but when it comes to books that deal very centrally with this county, the County Historical Society should be a place where there is a second copy. So we've been promised either tomorrow or Saturday, history of the Mickley family. When Bob Bigham was getting ready to become the 3rd Adams County judge and cleaned out his law office, he said that he had a lot of books that he was willing to give to us if we wanted them. Quite a number of them were laws of Pennsylvania. Quite a lot of them were laws of Pennsylvania for years that we did not have. And we now have a complete set of the laws of Pennsylvania from 1682 to about 1960. You might say, what in the world do you want with that? Well, come around here some Wednesday and Saturday and just sit somewhere and see how often we use that. Because it may be that the answer to a question that we have is to be found only in a law that was passed and not in a book written about a book that has something about a law that was passed, because that's not the way we like to operate here. Our representative, whoever he is, a Republican or a Democrat, regularly gives us a copy of the Pennsylvania Manual, which used to come out every year and now comes out every 2 years. And which gives a great deal of information about state and county government in Pennsylvania, up to date. We have the Pennsylvania Manual from about 1880 or 90 to the present time. The other day, we got in the mail the statistical summary of the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture for 96, 97. And we have been systematically getting this volume from the Department of Agriculture. When we do get it, we write and tell them, thank you, please keep us on your mailing list. Because at some time in the future, there are going to be people who are interested in agriculture in this county. They want definite information which might not be obtainable if the only place you can go is a newspaper which might have a story about one aspect of that agriculture. And these books, year after year, are an important part of our library. We also have an archives. Not many historical societies in this state have the original estate papers generated in that county, maybe from the beginning of the county. We have virtually every estate paper generated in Pennsylvania, in Adams County from 1800 to 1989, thanks to the Register of Wills, who has added to our collection in the last year or two by giving us the actual will books up to about 1900. And those will books are important because in years past, people used to come in years after an estate was settled and take a will out, or an inventory out, or an account out, put in a receipt, and what there now is, 100 years later, is that receipt. And the only place that will is to be found is in the will book. The clerk of courts has been microfilming important dockets, which she has promised to give to us when she and her staff can check the microfilm against the original to be sure that the original has been microfilmed in its entirety. There's something else of value in our archives. About 6 months ago, Phil Jones said that he has come across some of the books of the Gettysburg Furniture Company. Would we like to have them? This is no time for a contest, but we could put a contest on for you to figure out what I said when he indicated that we could have them. I believe that Phil Jones has called me about 6 times since that first time because he keeps finding books and papers, the last little batch of which I went out to the Times and got last Thursday or Friday morning. And I told him that if he finds something yet, he knows where to call me. Now, I've started reading those minutes. They're the minutes of the directors, not only of the Gettysburg Furniture Company, but if you know something about the history of that company, you know that it worked in tandem with several other companies. Reeser, the Gettysburg Panel Company, and several others. And we have either the complete minutes or almost complete minutes of all 4 of them. Although there is a good bit of information there that is legal and does not have very much meaning, there's a lot there that does say something about how one of Adams County's major employers operated. Beginning about 1905 and coming up into the period after World War II. There's a lot of work in every historical society, including ours, which goes on behind the scenes. There's been a tremendous amount of work going on here in the last 2 years, prompted by the fact that the museum has been moved entirely to the 3rd and 4th floors, with a few exceptions. There's part of the museum back here in the corner. And the fact that the museum has moved up freed space for the expansion and better ordering of the library and the archives. And we have a small but dedicated team that always finds more than enough to do in the day that is spent here. There's Elwood Chris, there's Cheryl Snyder, there's Randy Miller, there's Carol Carney, there's Thelma Bullitt, there's Sarah Fuss, there's Lita Brown, there's Tim Smith, there's Kay Staub and Joan Thomas, and there is Dick Mountford, and there are others missed, not deliberately, but otherwise. When someone gives us something, we try to put a number on it somewhere, to acknowledge the gift with a letter of thanks, to gather as much information as we can about how this thing was used and by whom. And in the last year or two, we have reorganized the way in which we keep what we know about accession 79-84 or 85-91. Carol Carney has come to the records we keep of these accessions time and time again when she's trying to prepare a caption for a museum item upstairs. We have a good many periodicals, as Rick Mountford knows. And they were not in the best shape, were they? Go ahead and say it. He is trying to put them into shape, box them, and write out little sheets with the information that is supposed to be put on the labels. That task is more than half done, isn't it?
Yes.
You're on the down swing, and it's going to be easier to manage those periodicals once you finish. It's going to be easier to add some as new ones come in, as the next issue of the statistical summary of the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture comes our way. We have finished the truly massive reorganization of what we call the library extension. If you come into the office occasionally, you know there are filing cabinets there, and that not everything we have can be put into those filing cabinets because things are too big. Long ago, we moved those things up into the library extension with some makeshift shelves and not much in the way of organization. we have spent hundreds upon hundreds of dollars buying document boxes. It seemed for a while about every other week, Cheryl Snyder was telling me, we need some more document boxes, and they are not cheap. But the job is just about done. And when someone comes and asks Elwood Chris for a set of records, he knows where to go upstairs and look for it. If someone asks for the Hotel Gettysburg, we have a lot of Hotel Gettysburg records that Elise Sharp Fox gave us. Someone has come in recently and asked for the records of the Adams County Fruit Growers Association and got what he was looking for. We have records from anniversaries of events in Adams County history going back at least to 1950. There have been 2 or 3 people, have there not, Woody, more than 1, 2 or 3 people who have been asking questions in the last 6 months or year about Elsie Singmaster. And much of what remains of the Elsie Singmaster collection is here. She divided what she wanted to give between the library and here, and a point came at which the library decided we don't want to keep those things, and so those things came here. And we're glad that we're able to use them when people come and ask for them. We have also finished another massive job, which we turned over to someone who has not been able to finish her part of it. We have put on 3x5 slips of paper the name of thousands of taxables in Adams County at intervals between 1762 and 1821, and then between about 1850 and 1870. On slips of paper, the name of a taxable, the township, and the year. This job took something like 10 years. And now, in a number of boxes upstairs, are these names alphabetized. Oh, you say it's easy to alphabetize something. You start with A and you go with C. But suppose a name is spelled 4 or 5 or 6 different ways, and you have to decide which one of those ways is the one that you want to use. It's remarkable that Sarah Fuss still has her sanity, because that woman worked mightily to try to get those 6 names put together with cross-references. If it's Beesaker, spelt with a P, Peaceacre, or many other ways. We put all of them under Beesaker, but there's a card in there for Peaceacre, see Beesaker. Now, one of our good friends has promised to computerize this massive collection, and then we're going to publish it. And it's going to be extremely hard for anybody who lived here 225 years ago, 200 years ago, 175 years ago to hide from us. We're going to track them down. We have 2 letters, one answered and one not answered yet, from people who want to know about the Parcells family in Adams County. They were here only a very short time. What can you tell us about it? Where would you go to begin to answer a question like that? To this amorphous collection, it's still amorphous. And in answering the first letter, I found that the Parcells family was here longer than this person thought, because they appeared in the tax lists longer. This is a most useful resource, especially since the date is there, the township is there, the name is there. If people come through the front door and say, I want to know something about someone who lived here in 1771, I have no idea where in the county, where are you going to start? In recent months, there has been more and more requests of us for photographs, for personal use, and also for publication. We have the Lane collection of some 50,000 negatives. We have the Raymer collection of thousands of negatives. And we also have a lot of photographs that have gravitated to us over the last 50 or 60 years. We've had so many requests that this now takes up a significant part of Elwood Christ's time. And it has come to the point at which we've had to draw up a license agreement for the use of these photographs and determine upon a schedule of charges. Because if these photographs are to appear in books that are published and distributed nationally, no one should take advantage of this historical society and expect to be able to use these photographs to make a great deal of money without paying the bill. Now, in addition to this, we have had to carry on the business of handling correspondence, some of which asks for things that can be done easily, and some of which asks for things that can scarcely be done, because even with what we have, there's almost no evidence. And then we have to carry on the business of dealing with people who come through the door and occasionally ask questions very directly and in a very helpful manner. And there are other people who do not know what they want and are not really able to ask questions that enable us to answer what they'd like to know. A man called last Saturday morning from Virginia. Do you have any information on a family that lived there before the Revolution? What was the name of the family? It was Reed. Well, I think we have some information. I think I'll come up, which he did. And how long did he spend? Would he 2 hours, 3 hours?
Wasn't it a half a day?
All right. He went away happy, didn't he? Because we were able to show him more about a very influential Reed family that lived in the Fairfield area than he expected. He also came here telling me that he has read a lot of things about that family which he cannot believe, and he would like to have some information that he can believe. Well, we showed him tax lists and surveys and things like that. He almost had to believe them. Last year, a good friend of the society asked whether we had a wish list. Now, when good friends ask you whether you have a wish list, whether you have one or not, you better produce one in 24 hours. We did produce one. We wished for 6 things, each of which had a price. We sent the list in something like 48 or 72 hours. We had a check from this good friend for $18,500, which we used to buy a reader printer for the first time in our history, to buy a new copier, and one that has turned out to be a very good copier. We purchased a television set, not so we can sit here and watch soap operas, but so that we can use it in instruction, because it is not set up with an antenna. We bought a screen and we bought a projector. And we have a little bit of money left over to use for the 4th item, which is in progress. We still have one phone number after all these years, but we now have 5 telephones in this building. And it's almost impossible when you have gotten along with one phone for all this time to believe that now we have 5. And if we're in the basement, the phone might ring here. If we're on the 3rd floor, the phone might ring there, and we can answer. We're soon going to have fax facilities. As soon we have the fax machine, and as soon as Randy Miller does the electrical work, we will take one more step into the 21st century. And we are now open 2 full days each week instead of a day and a half. One very laudable thing about this society is that there are a number of people in it who are scholars or researchers. And maybe the researchers are intelligent people who don't have college degrees or PhDs, but they have a lot of good sense. Jim Myers has published articles in Pennsylvania History and the Pennsylvania Magazine of History and Biography. Randy Miller has investigated and published booklets on wills of people who lived in Adams County and who died between 1745 and 1800, and then between 1826 and 1850. Larry Bolin, who is a volunteer in fact, but not in name, spent a lot of time and effort on the 1790 census. That's the first United States Census. Some idiot who prepared that census lumped people from 7 or 8 townships in western York County and eastern Adams County together. And you look at that list, you have no idea where those people lived, and that is very important if you want to undertake some serious study. Larry Bolin spent a lot of time with tax lists. We ordered the original of the 1790 census, which almost nobody ever sees because long, long ago it was published. And we now have a publication of the United States Census of 1790 as it applies not to the country, not to the state, but as it applies to Adams County, those parts of Adams County and York County for which the taxables were just lumped together. I'm sure that Arthur Weiner has not left the barn. He doesn't have as many milk cows as they used to. They used to have 50 or more. They may be down under 30 now. But when I want to call him at night, I sometimes wait until 10 o'clock until he's finished with his barn work. That man did the work on the manor of Mask. We talked about that before. You were perhaps here when he presented the results of his labors. 20 or so file drawers of information that he gathered in connection with the manor. When he was done with that, he went to work on Carol's Delight, a Maryland tract in the western part of this county, which he did not publish, but the information is upstairs, and when people come in and ask us about Carol's Delight, we now have organized information to give them. The last thing he's done is to deal with Diggs' Choice. 10,000 acres, let's say, a Maryland grant. Jan Banker worked on it, published the book. Arthur looked at it and said, the thing I don't like about it is that it doesn't help in determining where the Diggs' Choice tracts are now. And so he produced a map. He produced a monograph on each tract in Diggs' Choice. We are preparing to make those tracts available. We've just entered them into big binders, and before long we'll be able to announce the availability of the map and the monograph, but not quite today. Now, the people in this society who do things like that have also done some other things over the years, which I think redound to the credit of the society. Members of this society were very actively involved in the United States bicentennial celebration of 1975 and 1976. Were very much involved in the Gettysburg bicentennial of 1986 and 1987. And a number of us are very much involved in the celebration of the bicentennial of the birth of this man, which will begin on the 28th of February and continue into the fall. There are 3 or 4 or 5 events being sponsored. We expect that there may be as many Lutherans, as 1,000 Lutherans. Can you imagine 1,000 Lutherans gathered at one place on the earth's surface? There may be as many as 1,000 Lutherans on this campus on June the 10th, 1999, wandering through about every building on the campus, including this one. I suspect that we will have the museum open for tours upstairs. There may be an almost dying Union officer somewhere, maybe not in this room, but somewhere on this floor. He lived to tell about his experience here. He said, Colonel McFarland, that, was it a colonel?
Yeah.
He was the last person to leave the building. Schmoker came and visited him and even offered to talk to him, I think he was a Methodist, about becoming a Lutheran. Now, in progress is the celebration of the 200th anniversary of Adams County. There are Adams County Historical Society members on the committee. Either the main committee or some of the subcommittees meet here regularly. The chairman of the program committee of the Adams County Bicentennial Committee is here now, and I know that he and his committee have been working very hard to begin to prepare for events that are going to resound throughout the whole county. I'm referring to Don Smith. You would agree, Don, wouldn't you, that you are working very hard?
Very hard.
And I can tell you that I think you're working very successfully. We have a Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission grant to prepare a traveling exhibit that will be at many places in the county during the bicentennial, and obviously will later find a home. As our treasurer can tell you, we have $4,984 of state money to put this exhibit together. It was much easier to get the check and give it to the treasurer than it is going to be to put the exhibit together. And for better or for worse, that responsibility is going to rest heavily on Michael Berkner, the head of the history department at Gettysburg College, and me. And the grant proposal was written in such a way that Gettysburg College students are going to be involved in preparing the exhibit in a major way. There's also a committee of the society which is beginning to prepare a booklet which we hope to publish either late in '99 or early in 2000, featuring some of the historic buildings of the county that were here in 1800 and are still here. In addition to this topic, Arthur Weiner and I hosted members of the Geddes family and the McClellan family when they came to Gettysburg last summer. Not all of the Geddeses, and the ones who came here were descendants of James's son who went to Tennessee, and the McClellans were mostly interested in the McClellan who married Jenny Wade's sister. Now these people come, maybe 20 of them, 30 of them. They spend about an hour here with Arthur Weiner's maps. He tells them more than perhaps they want to know about where the Geddeses lived and where the McClellans lived. We try to answer their questions, and then often after they're gone, they write to us and we write to them, and all in all, I think that it is a very worthwhile activity for this society to engage in, and whenever somebody asks us to do this, Arthur and I say right away, we will. Some of you may remember the time when the treasurer got up at every meeting, every monthly meeting, and read a detailed financial report of what had happened during the last month. And then the the secretary would get up and read the minutes of the last meeting. We don't do that anymore. Every spring, there is a condensed financial report indicating what we took in and what we spent, and Francis Colson keeps excellent minutes of these meetings and also meetings of committees and of the board of directors. An organization like this needs good minutes. Not every person who agrees to be secretary can keep good minutes, but Francis certainly can. All right, where do we get our money? Well, the commissioners have given us some money ever since the year we moved out here, except 1 year when I think Harry Biesecker forgot. We started off with $800, and now we get $5,000, which is something of a drop in the bucket, yes. The Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission has given us matching grants since 1990. We have special memberships, life membership, McPherson memberships. We're going to recognize a new McPherson membership soon this evening. We got 2 life memberships and 2 McPherson memberships in 1998. We get about $5,000 in annual gifts, but we can't be absolutely sure that we will get that every year. We hope we will, and we hope we'll get more. And occasionally we get a bequest. The widow of a native of Fairfield, worked in Lancaster, was a trustee of the college here, left us $10,000 in memory of her husband, Mary Glenn, and we're very, very happy to get that. When we get a bequest, when we get a McPherson membership or a life membership, we put this money into our invested funds and do not use it. There are many times when I'm called upon to speak at one place or another, and there's a sentence that keeps coming up in my mind, and I use it. If you've heard me use it somewhere recently, try to listen to it again. It's from Peter Marshall, Reverend Peter Marshall, who was chaplain of the Senate after World War II, and whose prayers, I think, have made more of an impression than the prayers of any Senate chaplain since George Washington succeeded in getting one. Don't think the creek you know is the whole ocean. Don't think the creek you know is the whole ocean. We are not alone here. There are many other historical societies which are making advances, major advances. They're gathering financial resources which they can use to pay staff and carry on programs. We here are severely limited as far as our financial resources are concerned. As I said, in 1958, this society had $449. Now we have about $550,000, but the Historical Society in York County in 1997 had an income of $900,000 and current assets and invested funds of $2,100,000. Just because they are our parent county and bigger than us, you shouldn't shunt them off and say we're not in their league. We have come a long way in the last 40 years, there is no question about it, but we still have a long way to go. Maybe the day will come, but I don't think any of us will live to see it, when somebody can get up here and say, we have arrived. We can now coast. We can look back and be sure that there's nobody back there that we can see who is following us. Well, don't think the creek you know is the whole ocean. If I have one last word, it is help!
Now I speak for everyone here in expressing appreciation for your talk tonight, but for what you do all year and for so many years. I think words just absolutely fail me when I think of how much you do and how much you give to the society. And I just don't know how we can thank him, but let's give it. I just wish that everyone in the county knew about the wonderful work that is being done here. It always amazes me how many people contribute their time, their interest. I find it quite amazing to come here and realize the interest that so many people have in working, and people who use the society because they need the information that it can provide. And I just think it's an exciting work that's going on, and I hope too we will reach the success that you hope for. It's my special pleasure tonight to present to Mrs. Sloat her certificate of membership in the McPherson Society. She joined the society and has made this contribution to the Historical Society in memory of her distinguished husband, Charles Allen Sloat. So we are very, very pleased to thank you, to welcome you to the society, and to give you this certificate.